Hello, boa tarde, bom dia. So, I hope that you're well. Happy winter break for those of you who are in college, whether a student or teaching or both. So, I am officially on winter break as of today. Yesterday, I submitted the grades for my university, and the day before, I submitted my epistemology paper. Um, it was on. I was looking at virtue epistemology and I was sort of reading literature and trying to define epistemic humility. And my suggestion was that epistemic confidence is necessary and essential to epistemic humility. So I was really happy about that. This video, I'm going to talk about the books I want to read during winter break because that's always sort of my happiest task. Also, I am studying Portuguese. I I don't think I really study languages to be fluent. I study languages because I feel them and I'm in the mood for various languages and I like to listen to different kinds of music and watch videos. And I don't know, I just like the way it sounds. For me, certain languages are like ASMR for people. It just kind of tickles my brain. Okay, so this is my plan. Obviously, I'm not going to finish all of these. Some of these I've already started and I'm just picking them up. So let's start with the books that I am continuing from the summer. I have sort of a constellation that I've curated about Freud, Jung, Sabina Spielrein, and yeah, that triad. So I'm reading the Freud Jung letters, the correspondences. You can kind of see how much I read so far. That is really interesting. Of course, Freud and Jung were in correspondence, were friends, kind of had a father-son dynamic for about, was it 7 years from 1906 to 1913, something like that. And so you can kind of see where Jung is trying to kind of like walk on eggshells and tiptoe around Freud's more, I think, like assertive, kind of enmeshed, kind of fatherly stature and mindset. Like Freud really wanted Jung to be his disciple and for Jung to basically agree with him. But Jung just kept trying to like very subtly say, it's not all about like sexual repression and the libido. I want to define it differently, etc. So it's really interesting seeing that. I actually have a book of correspondence between Anna Freud and Sigmund, but I don't know if I'm going to get to that, but I could add that into this group. Okay, so the other books, I have this book, A Most Dangerous Method. This was a dissertation originally and turned into this book, and also is what the movie with, oh, what's her name? Keira Knightley. I haven't seen the movie, but there's a movie about it. I think it might be called the same thing. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I'm kind of on the fence whether I really want to watch movies that are about like philosophers and writers, etc., and psychologists. I don't know, but I really enjoy reading this. This is amazing because it sort of tells you from this, I kind of realized how unique the neuroses were in this particular time period. And it was also a time period where I think women were gaining like more regular access into the university. And so it's really interesting to see how, for instance, Sabina Spielrein, because this book is about her and her relationship with Freud and Jung, which was, I'm kind of getting like, it was a bit like of a triangulated relationship in a sense, because it seems like, and I haven't, read as much as I could to tell, the story of it, but it seems like there was a relationship between, so Sabina Spielrein at first was a patient at the hospital where Jung practiced. And then Jung sort of became enamored of Sabina, and she says in her diary that, Jung says about his wife Emma that, she doesn't care about what I'm doing, which is kind of strange because I have the two essays by Emma Jung and I've read them on topics that Jung talks about. So I don't, maybe it was just a mood or like at the time he didn't realize. But Sabina says, he really loves that we can talk intellectually. And of course, Sabina Spielrein, she's widely published. I think she has like a 20-year publication kind of run, and she had her own practice, etc. And you can read, I mean, basically her diary and her letters to Freud are psychology and philosophy, and it's really interesting, actually. I'm actually learning and understanding a lot of what Jung um, says about like the unconscious and sort of like the symbolic instincts that we inherit, the collective unconscious, etc. I sort of am understanding him more by reading Sabina because she always is saying that, how Freud and Jung's ideas about certain things are different, and her ideas, compared to Jung. Oh, I was talking about the triangulation. Okay, so yeah, so they sort of had a relationship, and then it started to become known and a bit of a scandal or sort of like criticism toward Jung, because he's, I guess, at the time, like it was sort of okay, but also not okay to have relationships with like your students or disciples, etc. Um, but he sort of, I think, like sent her off to Freud, and Sabina worked with Freud for a while, and I think Jung like wrote a letter to Sabina's mother, and Sabina would write Freud a letter on the back of a letter that Jung had written to her. So it just seemed, I'm just getting into it, but it seems a bit triangulated. Um, in an interesting way. So, yeah, so there's this book that I'm going to pick up, and then I have Jung's The Red Book. I I don't know, I'm about two-thirds of the way. This is basically, if you've not read this, it's sort of Jung's personal private shadow work that is now published. It has been, I don't know, since when? Not too long though. I think it took a while for the family holders of the Red Book and these manuscripts to be released. So I'm glad they finally did. And oh, this is the book about Sabina's diaries and letters and a little bit of her story as well. I think that is his name, John Kerr, the author of A Most Dangerous Method. He drew a lot from this. So this is A Secret Symmetry by, I think, an Italian author and researcher. I think that might be it. The only other sort of Jungian book is this book edited and compiled by Connie Zweig, Meeting the Shadow, the Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature. So I taught world mythology this last semester, and it was really amazing. I loved it. And I went to about mid-semester, I went to a live stream workshop of Connie's, and it was really powerful. I mean, she was really going through like the process of doing shadow work, and I was like writing down information. I was like taking my own notes. I was crying because it was just very, it was very therapeutic, right? So then I created an assignment for my students, and I gave them this assignment as an option for their final project. And three of my students chose to do it. I sort of gave like a lot of different options. Some people went a creative route, some people went like a more traditional paper route. And I said, hey, shadow work could be a thing that you did. And I just love what they came up with. So I'm not actually very far in this at all. So I would like to read it. And then I feel like I always bring up the Zohar. So I'm still in the second volume. I really only read this when there are breaks, like winter break, summer break. That's really when I'm reading the most, I would say. Um, Kabbalistic literature, esoteric Judaism. All right. And then I'm taking a class with the same professor that I took epistemology with this semester. I was sort of introduced to analytic psychology, or no, philosophy, sorry. Been talking about psychology, analytical philosophy, and thus the virtue epistemology, etc. And really love the way, like the formulaic way that analytic philosophers write. I don't know. I think because my thinking is so interdisciplinary and sometimes metaphysical, sometimes psychological, sometimes a little creative, and maybe even more eros than logos. The structure of how analytic philosophers write, like, kind of gives me sort of a grounding container for my thoughts that are otherwise a bit chaotic. So I kind of like know the next step that I'm supposed to take when I'm writing in that kind of style. So anyway, well, actually, first, okay, so my professor loaned me Kassim's book, Vices of the Mind. I did not actually use this book because he gave it to me the last class, and I had already sort of decided what article I wanted to base my paper off of. But I am reading it since he let me borrow it. But I had to buy my own copy because have to highlight, and I didn't want to, I can't highlight his book. Anyway, so I'm going to give his book back, but I will have read my copy of it. And then, so going on to the next class, it's going to be a class about Nietzsche completely, but I think from an analytic philosophy type lens. I say that because we have to write the precis. That's like the one sort of assignment that he gives. And I really, at first, I didn't know what that meant or what that was about. But I quickly caught on and love it. So I am getting out my Nietzsche stack and starting with this one on the advantage and disadvantage of history for life. I started reading it this morning. He's talking about Germans and the German personality. And this is one of the chapters or essays in Untimely Meditations. And I have that book. So, I have a chance to, I guess, read it again after I read, but I wanted to read it in here because I had already started. And I think I just didn't have Untimely Meditations when I got this book. I am going to, do I have a bookmark in here? I do. I'm going to finish Dawn of Day, or it's usually called Daybreak. Also, The Will to Power. I did take a class a couple of semesters ago. This one doesn't have Um, I'll get it later. I took a class on Hegel, Nietzsche, and Marx a couple of semesters ago. So we read some of The Will to Power in that class. I also have Kaufman's biography, called Nietzsche, Philosopher, Psychologist, and Antichrist. So I don't know, I think it's funny. And this is really interesting. I'm not super far in that either. And then, because, me and correspondences, I love correspondence. I love letters. I love understanding the personal lives. It's like my guilty pleasure. It's like my reality show, basically, is reading, I don't know, like the published letters and diaries of various philosophers and people that I read. So I have the selected letters of Friedrich Nietzsche, and again, I'm just like on page 18, it looks like. So, and let's see. So, kind of based on the world mythology class I taught, the last text that we talked about was the Odyssey. And I wasn't actually planning on doing Greek mythology, basically because I thought my students probably had enough of it, like in K through 12. Because I mean, I remember us, I think like an 8-year-old dressing up in a toga and deciding what goddess I was going to be, which I decided to be Athena, which is interesting, I think. Because when I taught world mythology the first time, I dressed up as Medusa, and Medusa and Athena kind of are like a dual sort of shadow feminine, like wounded, um, sort of Eros, and like Athena is all like logos and strategy and creativeness, etc. So, and war, and so she helps Odysseus throughout his journey back home from the Trojan War. And I had a student who was going to write about it, and he said, actually, I came into your class because I wanted to talk about the Odyssey. And I'm like, well, all right. So now it's on the syllabus. So we managed to carve out, like, I think a couple, maybe 3 classes on the Odyssey. And we read book 5 and then we read book 24. So book 5, I actually want to do a video about it because it's my favorite book. That's the one where Odysseus is on Calypso's island, and Hermes comes to like tell Calypso to like let Odysseus go so he can return back to his wife and his son. And I just really enjoyed it. And I'm really enjoying this translation by Emily Wilson. I think I want to call her Emily Watson. Emily Wilson. So I have Wilson's translation of the Iliad as well, and she's so good. So I started this today. I was thinking that the Iliad and then Nietzsche's books will be like my morning day reading, and then the Kasim, Vices of the Mind, the Sabina Spielrein, and then this last book, The Destiny of Man by Berdiev, will be my like evening books. So The Destiny of Man was kind of my book that I started at the beginning of this semester, and I was kind of reading it a little bit here and there, like on the weekends, just kind of personally, like my personal interests, because it is really hard for me as a student, a philosophy student, and full-time faculty, and also with my part-time adjuncting at the university, that I've taken classes at. It's hard for me to read just for pleasure, just something I don't have to read, and this was my book. So I am, I don't know, I think I have maybe 70 pages of this left. So I sort of started to read the end, and then, so I have like a part in the middle that I'm reading, and I think I'm going to do more videos on this because I'm really loving it. Berdiev, if you haven't seen my other videos, is a Russian Christian existentialist. He talks about how we need to go beyond good and evil, but not like in a Nietzsche way, more in sort of transcending a kind of duality that can too easily become each other, become its opposite. So he talks about how, in the name of good, really evil things can be done. And so, really, the kingdom of God is going beyond that. He says that it's not really a true Christian concept. Hell is not a true Christian concept. The idea that you punish anyone because we're all sinners, and really, from a spiritual perspective, we should collectively understand ourselves ascending or transforming, evolving together, like no one left behind. And I really resonate with that. That is exactly what I think as well. Salvation shouldn't be like an individual kind of sort of selfish thing. It should be collective, and we should understand that as long as we are, on Earth in this incarnation, we are going to be, if we're human, we're going to be a mix of good and bad. Even if we're doing all the shadow work and the inner work that we can, there's still, as long as we're alive, there's still something to work on. And so, how can we want to condemn somebody to eternal sort of suffering and punishment? He says that there's a third way, a better way than rewarding people who have made it into heaven and punishing people who should go to hell. There is a third way where we all collectively, like the kingdom of heaven will not come until we all collectively can align with that sort of frequency and energy. So some of that maybe is my language and not Berdiev's, but that is it. And yeah, oh, I already showed the Iliad. So yeah, and also I have the Aeneid. And usually my idea is that when I finish one book, I kind of bring another into the fold. And I usually read like 5 books simultaneously. So right now, that is the Iliad, Berdiev, it's none of these. This Nietzsche book, Vices of the Mind. It's my other copy. And as I said, the Sabina Spielrein one. So those are my 5 books. And I don't know, probably like when I finish this Nietzsche book, I'll put in another Nietzsche book. And if I finish the Iliad, I'll do another, like the Aeneid or something like Greek literature. So I'll kind of like keep these categories. I don't know what category Nikolai Berdyaev is. I think it's just the category of books that I get recommended by my friend who introduced Berdyaev to me. Like it'll be like the stack of like books that I see him reading, I think, because I already have another one, this Lithuanian philosopher, which Amazon put in my mailbox, which is very far away to me. So I don't know when I'm going to get that. But, and then for my epistemology book, I don't know what's going to replace that, but we'll see. I don't know. So that's pretty much it. Those are my winter break books. And um, really, I had my last Portuguese lesson of December today because my new tutor that I just got this month, she's going on vacation, which she totally deserves. So I guess I'll just be, watching my YouTube videos and seeing if I can find any films in Portuguese, like on Netflix or something. If I have an account, I don't know if I have an account there anymore. I don't think so. But yeah, so put in the comments what you're doing for winter break, what you're reading. If you have any recommendations for me. Oh, I'd also like to read maybe notes from the underground, Dostoevsky. So yeah, we'll just see. But my days are pretty much just reading books. All right, I will see you later. Okay. Have a wonderful winter season.